There was the attack in Brussels last week. Just a few days ago, there was the attack in Pakistan. It seems to me that these things are starting to become more frequent, and there's just a feeling that now, I saw something this week that they're saying that there's probably 400 ISIS operatives in Europe ready to partake in whatever the next event is going to be. So can you just break down Brussels a little bit? Because I know for weeks before, people were saying this was about to happen. So they obviously had good intelligence, and it still happened. And I think that's what the really scary part is.
Yes, I mean, obviously what happened in Brussels is absolutely horrific, but it was not, to me at least, it was not a surprise. It was coming, we knew that. And you were just saying that obviously we had good intelligence. Well, you have to distinguish there, but because obviously the Belgian authorities didn't have the intelligence that they were supposed to be having, and that is a problem that people like myself have raised for quite a long time now, that the very weak nature of the Belgian state, I mean, it's sometimes even problematic to speak of Belgium as a state because it's so torn apart internally. And the state of the Belgian secret services and intelligence services, they are ill-equipped, they are massively undersized, and they simply don't have the resources to monitor all the people that they are actually supposed to be monitoring. Because let's not forget that Belgium has the highest percentage per capita of foreign fighters with the Islamic State in the entire European Union. And it's no coincidence that these people have chosen Belgium as a place where they can gather and plan and carry out attacks, because of course they are well aware of all these weaknesses that I've just listed. And, by failing their own people, Belgium is putting everyone else at risk. Because obviously these people do not appreciate nation states. Someone in France or someone in Germany or the UK is just as much an enemy to these people as the people of Belgium. And it can openly cross borders. I mean, we still have the Schengen area in Europe where people can cross borders without showing their passports or any form of identification. And that's why we are seeing the terrorism that we see. And that's also why we see a network really spamming from Paris to Belgium. And this was the first time ever that one terrorist cell managed to attack two European capitals.
Yeah, did you hear any? I saw a story that I saw in one place, and then I didn't see it picked up anywhere else. So if this is not true, please stop me. But I heard that when they were going to arrest the guy in Belgium just a week ago, that apparently that in his community, that about 200 people were trying to stop the police and the anti-terror people from arresting him. They were throwing bottles at the police and all kinds of stuff. Did you hear about that? And is it being reported in Europe at all?
I heard about that as well. I think some media outlets reported that there were riots taking place when they arrested him. And to be honest, it's not surprising to me at all, because you have to understand these people don't work in isolation. They're embedded in communities. And if you look at these notorious neighborhoods like Molenbeek in Belgium, it's not just the terrorists that are the problem. It's the wider society in which they live, who maybe are not jihadists themselves and who not engaged in violence themselves, but who are at least to a certain degree described to the Islamist ideology. Which brings me to the overall problem, really, that it's not good enough to say this is just a problem with the fringe, because yes, there is only a tiny minority that carries out violent attacks, but there is a larger minority that subscribe to the Islamist worldview, and an even larger minority, a significant minority, that practices conservative Islam that is not compatible with the modern world. And we are not talking a few hundred or a few thousand people here, we are talking millions. And even if you say that just 1% of all Muslims in the world are jihadists, we are talking about 15 or 16 million people.
Yeah.
I mean, wrap your head around this for a moment.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I know that many people, like Sam Harris, who I've had on this show, have gone out of their way to talk about these concentric circles. And you have the nominal people who don't necessarily care about religion or following doctrine, and then it sort of extends outward from that. So what do we do with that? Because this is where the conversation gets difficult. So you've obviously just laid out there that you don't think all Muslims are doing this, but you do see certain amount of problems. A certain amount of people are going to use violence. A certain amount of people are going to condone that violence. A certain amount of people are going to see it brewing in their communities and not do anything. And then it just keeps, it's like an onion. There's just more and more layers. So how do we in the West combat that? Because we're fighting the people, we're fighting them, and then we're fighting the people on our left who are trying to silence us from talking about it.
Well, I think one good example is your show, really, because you equip people with the rhetoric to engage in just daily life in these debates as well, and to make the distinction between the religion of Islam, which is a set of beliefs, and Islamism, which is an ideology which partly derives from a particular interpretation of the religion, and jihadism, which then is sort of the violent extension of Islamism. So I think that's, first of all, a distinction that's very important to make, because it also makes it easier for people like ourselves to reject, charges of racism and bigotry and Islamophobia.
Yeah. Don't you get exhausted by making the distinction, though, because it almost doesn't win you any friends on the left? Because that's how I feel. But I'll continue to do it.
Exactly. I mean, I don't really have another choice, right? I mean, the other option would be to join Donald Trump's camp and just generalize and stigmatize all Muslims, and that's really not what I want to see. I mean, that is precisely why I'm not a bigot and not a racist. Yeah. Because I don't want to engage in these generalizations and sweeping statements and brushing everyone over the same tar. I don't want to do that. And that is why I keep explaining to people there is a difference between a religion, and Islam is a religion like any other religion. It is a set of beliefs, and we should have the right to criticize particular beliefs within the faith if they are harmful and incompatible with our modern way of life. And I sometimes call Islam the virgin amongst faiths, because you are not allowed to touch it. Yeah. You are not allowed to touch the virgin. They are happy to discuss with you gender inequality when it comes to Orthodox Judaism. Right. And they are quite happy to discuss with you bigoted views on the fundamentalist Christian right about abortion and women and gays.
Don't forget about the Crusades. Don't forget about the Crusades. They love the Crusades.
Of course, that's what they say all the time. But don't forget what we did 200 years ago. Yeah. They talk about the persecution of Muslims in Burma by Buddhist extremists, and they don't hesitate to call them Buddhist extremists and make the link to the religion of Buddhism. But when it comes to Islam, it's off topic. You are not allowed to touch Islam. The moment you touch Islam, you're a bigot, you're a racist. No matter what distinction you're making between the religion and the ideology and jihadism, you're a racist. That very moment you want to talk about Islam.
Yeah, so basically you'll continue to make this distinction because we sort of have no choice. I mean, that's how I feel too, because I don't want to hand it to the far right. But that's a good segue to a lot of what's happening in Europe right now. So you mentioned earlier that because of the European Union, that people don't have to use passports to go all over the place. So this is why the ideology can spread, and it's why people can go from Paris to Brussels. So two questions here. One is people seem to want, there's a certain amount of people that want to break up the EU altogether. And secondly, I want to talk about immigration as a whole. So why don't we start with the first one?
Well, yes, obviously there is a debate going on everywhere in Europe about open borders, because many people feel like it's no longer an asset and rather aiding those people that we are trying to contain. I mean, I always, as a European myself, I always felt it was great that I could just cross the border. When I lived in Germany, I felt it was great to just cross the border into the Netherlands or Belgium or France without having to show my passport. It's great. But the problem is, if you have a system like open borders, you also need adequate security to back this up. And what the Belgium example shows you is that right now we are not having the security apparatus that can safeguard us whilst having open borders. Because if Belgium is failing to contain the threat, and that's what they are doing, and have been doing for a long time. And these people can travel freely across the entire European Union. It's a little different with the UK because you have to cross some water and it's more complex.
Right.
But into France or Germany or the Netherlands, then we are having a problem, and we have to talk about it. And I'm not very partisan when it comes to this entire yes EU, anti-EU debate. But I do think that we have to honestly talk about the liabilities of open borders at the moment. And that is true for terrorists as much as it is for refugees.
Do you know, is the vetting process for the migrants and the immigrants, is it the same in each country? Because if they're all, let's say they're coming through Greece, if Greece has more lax processes by which they can get in, well then once you're in Greece, if you can then get anywhere in Europe, I could see why you would be pretty pissed if you were in France and Greece had lax ways to get people in.
Well, the truth is that all of these countries are actually overwhelmed. They cannot process all these people in time that they are arriving. And the truth is also that many of them are just throwing away their papers. So you have no way to even check who they are or where they're coming from. And the truth is also that many of them are actually not coming from Syria. They're also coming from countries like Afghanistan and Eritrea. And I feel like the biggest problem at the moment is that we are only treating the symptoms. We are not treating the root cause. Because what is the plan for Eritrea? Mm-hmm. Nobody is talking about Eritrea. What are we going to do about the situation in Eritrea to make sure that not more people are coming? I mean, we have to look at these countries and the situation in these countries, and we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to change the situation on the ground and to help people within their own region? Because the truth is that even a large country like Germany, a welcoming country like Germany, cannot take in all the people that need help. And how do you explain to someone from Libya that, yes, we are taking in people from Syria and Eritrea and Afghanistan, but no, you're a Libyan, please stay away. We can't discriminate there. And the truth is that we cannot take in all these people. And my fear is that Angela Merkel has sent a very dangerous message in the sense that people now believe everybody can come. And if you look at the situation in Germany at the moment, you see they are already struggling. I know that the government is not willing to admit that, but if you look at the situation on the ground, they are really, really struggling. And the opposition within even her own party is growing by the day.
Yeah, so this is an example where when I hear this, I always say, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So Angela Merkel, her intentions by bringing these people in were to help immigrants, right? Help migrants, help people that needed help, integrate them into society. Obviously, Germany has a long history of xenophobia and the Holocaust, so they were trying to do the right thing. I don't think, I've talked to people who think that she maliciously is trying to destroy the country. I don't quite think it's that. I think she was trying to do something good here. But then, because of, I guess, the questionable vetting process or just allowing too many people in, these people come in and then the system just can't take it. And then when people in other countries see what's happening in Germany, they don't want it happening there. So this whole thing has just snowballed. And is it too late? Have we already left this, that the only resolution will be that far-right parties are going to win throughout Europe?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that I don't think this is an evil master plan of Angela Merkel to destroy Germany or the European Union. I don't believe that. I believe that for whatever reasons, she believes this is the right thing to do. The problem is I recently spoke to friends of mine who sits in the German parliament for her party, for the CDU, and he said, even now, we are still not having a discussion about quota. There is no end to this. Even the people within her own party don't know where it stops. And that, of course, gives people like the far right in Germany, and we see, the Pegida movement, and we see what is called the alternative for Germany. These people are really gaining support and really gaining ground. And these are, of course, not the people that we want to hand the debate over to. And I know that there are people who try to romanticize movements like Pegida and say, they are just concerned citizens who take to the streets and exercise their right of free speech. But, I'm quite familiar with the neo-Nazi scene in Germany, and I looked at footage from Pegida demonstrations, And you see very well-known people from the neo-Nazi scene taking part in these demonstrations. And I'm not a fan of guilty by association. I mean, you cannot always control who comes to your demonstrations.
Sure.
But it goes further. I mean, this guy gave an interview to one of Germany's well-known political magazines and very openly admitted that the NPD, which is the neo-Nazi party in the country, helped Pegida to organize this particular demonstration in the east of Germany. So you see already, the lines blurring between the populist right and really the extreme right.
Yeah, I'm curious. Let's dig into Pegida a little bit more, because I had Tommy Robinson on the show, and a lot of people were very angry at me. I got a lot of hate mail for even just talking to the guy. Now, I think in the context of the hour of our conversation, he did basically make the distinction between ideas and people and all of those things. And after the interview, which I thought was pretty fruitful, people did send me tweets that he sent out years before where he was talking about all Muslims, and there clearly was an element of bigotry to it. I can't vet my guests' tweets from 5 years ago, unfortunately. But what do you make of someone like him that I think, from what I can tell, he's trying to make the distinction. And I know he's left organizations when it's gone too far right, or when they were bigoted against black people. I guess that just shows the complexity of this, that these organizations, they have all kinds of people in them.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy Robinson is a very tricky example, and I don't want to dive too much into this because, to be fair, I'm not familiar with everything that he's doing at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what I know is, because we work with Quilliam as well, and I know Majid Nawaz, that he was really trying to get him away from the EDL, and that he's making an attempt to engage with him and explain to him the difference between, the religion of Islam, which is a set of beliefs, and Islam as an ideology, and Muslims as people, and Islam as a system of beliefs. And I think, to some extent, if you're listening to what he's saying now, he has definitely made some progress. But yeah. I don't want to sort of approve of everything that he says, because I still believe that some of the views that he holds are problematic, to say the least. And for instance, his involvement in the Pegida movement, that is something that I do not approve of, and I do not believe that Pegida is a legitimate political, it legitimate in the sense that these people have the right to speak their minds, but not legitimate in the sense that I would ever support their views.